Okay, so good morning, Setauket. Today we are coming to you live from the Emma S. Clark Library. May has just begun and we have a beautiful sunny day today. Today we're going to tell you a real interesting story and one of my favorites about Thomas Hodgkins and his niece Emma and how our wonderful town was able to get such an incredible library. Before we get into all that, let me tell you a little bit about Tri-Spy Tours and the Three Village Historical Society. I started Tri-Spy Tours 7 years ago in collaboration with the Three Village Historical Society. I was doing the regular walking tours for them, and then I said, we should do a bike version, and then I thought, we should do a water version. So Tri-Spy was born. It is actually a play on a triathlon. That's why it's called Tri-Spy, because we do a walking version, we do a kayak version, and we do a bike version. And we have successfully sold out nearly every tour since we started. So we are very thankful. Obviously, Turn, the miniseries that was on AMC, which is now available on Netflix, certainly help. The stories that we tell during the tours do center around the spy ring. But we do feel at the Historical Society that the community is our museum. So we like to weave in some non-Revolutionary War history, and that brings us to the place we are today. When I started the company, Barbara M. Russell, the Brookhaven town historian, was quoted as saying, "Lucky is the child who hears the story from an elder and cherishes it for years." So I am that child. I actually heard the story of the Culper Spy Ring from the only female member of the Spy Ring's great-great-great-granddaughter. Her name was Kate Wheeler Strong. She lived a few houses away, and I used to go with another Strong descendant over to Cousin Kate's house, as we affectionately called her, and she would tell us stories. She lived till she was 98 years old. She was blind the last 40 years of her life, but she used to write for the Long Island Forum, True Tales from the Early Days on Long Island. So I actually have a Long Island Forum right here if you want to take a peek. And that's Kate on the cover. And then the Long Island Forum would put out these little pamphlets. And here's one here. Actually, the Emma S. Clark Library has probably about 50 of them in the children's room. So when we do open up from this COVID pandemic, certainly go in there and check them out. Also, we hope everyone is healthy and staying safe. But Kate used to invite all the neighbors over for Christmas time, and she would give them out. So I'm lucky enough to have a little collection. And one of the stories, a couple of the stories, Kate really liked to talk about everyday life here in Setauket and what it was like. Because she was blind the last 40 years of her life, she certainly didn't think it was a handicap in terms of her storytelling. She really believed that story should be not be read to children, but told with spontaneity. But she certainly missed the quickened look of interest and anticipation from the children's faces. She also kept records for the National Weather Service. She had a pretty extensive stamp collection. And the phonograph when that came about with talking books, that was certainly a great pleasure for her. Before we begin reading the story that we have for today, and the title is Thomas Hodgkins Gave a Library, let me just take you a little tour around the original section of the library. I'll give you a little history, and then we'll get into some storytelling. So I'm going to flip you all around so you can see. So it is a beautiful sunny day in Setauket. We have the Setauket Presbyterian Church across the way. This is the Village Green, which was once known as Meeting House Green, and that's where the British had their camp. It's called Fort Setauket. They took over the Presbyterian Church, and we have the Caroline Church of Brookhaven across the way there. We'll be coming to you live from these two churches hopefully next week, but that is the oldest wooden, continuously running Episcopal church in the United States, so that's kind of fun. Okay, but let's get to the place where we're talking about today. And after I read the story, I'm going to tell you some virtual events and things the library is offering now while they're closed for you all. But Thomas Hodgkins, who we'll talk about today, had a niece, Emma, and we'll get into her story when we read it, but she passed away in August of 1889, and then Thomas decided that he was going to build a library in her honor. And on October 3rd, 1892, after 8.5 months of construction, Emma S. Clark Library is opened, and it is on the birthday of Emma S. Clark. The total costs of the grounds and the building and the fixtures and the 1,500 books was about $12,000. I love that. That is a stained glass of the Archangel Michael. Anna Morand was appointed the first librarian, and I love this fact. Elizabeth Strong, Strong's Neck, receives the first library card. So that was kind of exciting. They've had several expansions. As you can see, it's much larger. This is the original section here. And one of my favorite little nooks to sit is in the original little reading room here, through the glass panes, and you get to kind of look out onto the green, and it's just certainly a wonderful, wonderful place to sit and read and relax. So let's get into the story, and while we're here, we will talk about how this library came to be. Little is known about Emma Clark's earliest years, except that she and her sister Annie were orphaned at a very early age, and they came to live in the United States with their uncle Thomas Hodgkins, who saw to the girls' upbringing and education. Okay, so let me flip you back around here. Hello? Okay. All right, so let's get into today's story. Thomas Hodgkins gave a library. I'm trying to see if you can see the library. Here we go. Thomas Hodgkins gave a library. And this is just a wonderful story because Kate really talks about what Setauket was like. So if a resident of Oldfield, absent for more than half a century, should come back to his old haunts, he would hardly know where to find many of the landmarks. Houses dot the woods, where there used to be such a tangle of roads that I have heard my father tell us of a party of young people who wandered for hours in attempt to reach the West Meadows. Needless to say, it was a cloudy day. The mud road, over which the early settlers carted mud to fertilize their fields, still winds its ancient way, though a bit wider at the latter end. Quaker Path has lost the curve which used to lead right to the house where Quaker meetings were held in the early days. As for Oldfield Lane, who would think of calling the wide road that leads now to the lighthouse a lane? It used to be so narrow that only the way to pass it was to drive up into the nearest field opening. And there were certain rules of the road. The heaviest load had the right of way, or if two equal loads met, the one nearer the opening had to back. They tell the tale of two men who met in the lane one day long ago. Neither had a load, but one was not only nearer the opening, but had only to back down the hill to reach it. The other, with the mean upgrade behind him, held to his rights. However, it was a case of neither side being willing to give in. They sat and argued until the man with the right of way tied his horse to a tree and went home to dinner. When he came back, the road was clear, so the right man won in the end. Such was Oldfield around 1860, when Mr. Thomas Hodgkins fell in love with the place and had decided to make it his home. He was a wealthy candy manufacturer, and when he decided to retire, he told someone that no spot in the whole world, and he had traveled far, suited him as well as the farm he had bought, bounded by the lane on one side and the Sound on the other. He called it Brambletie. Hodgkins had begun life as a poor boy in England. As a young man, he and his wife came to New York and set up a small candy business on Greenwich Street. Wealth came to them, but his wife did not live long enough to enjoy it. Two nieces shared his Oldfield home. As the years went on, one niece married and went away. Death claimed the other. It was her memory that he built the Emma S. Clark Memorial Library and presented it to the village of Setauket. He was so much interested in science. To the Royal Institute of Great Britain, he gave $100,000 to be used for scientific research. To the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, he gave $200,000, half without restrictions. The income from the other half had to be used for the diffusion of knowledge in the properties of air and its relation to the physical and intellectual welfare of mankind. This was to be effected by the offering of premiums for discoveries and essays in worldwide competition. Fresh air was his hobby. At Brambletie, he used special stones made of soapstone. They were so heavy that one took 4 people to bring in. A pipe from the cellar fed air into the stove. The pipe to the chimney had an outer casing perforated to admit fresh air from outdoors into the room. The stove doors could be left open to show the coal fire burning brightly in the grate. So important did this man consider these stoves to bodily health that before his niece Emma attended a nearby private day school, he insisted on having one of these stoves installed there. Brambletie was lighted mostly by candles, but reading lamps had pipes running from the top of their chimneys to the stovetop, so they would not pollute the air. He seldom went on the railroad, but when he did, he wore a tube over his mouth and his nose, with the end protruding from the window so he could breathe fresh air. It is said that nothing from his farm was ever sold. Everything extra, including livestock, was given away. He loved children and animals and gave large sums to the Society for the Preservation of Cruelty to Children and to the SPCA. Every winter for many years, he sent his teams to the Setauket Public School to take the youngsters for a sleigh ride, ending at his house where each child was given a box of candy. Wow. Mr. Hodgkins died on Thanksgiving Day, 1892. But his memory will be kept green not only in the annals of institutions here and abroad, which he aided so generously, but also the people of Setauket and surrounding communities for the public library, which means so much to us all. So I think that is just an incredible story about Thomas Hodgkins, the man. I certainly love the references of Mud Road and getting to the West Meadows and the story of Oldfield Lane. So Setauket was certainly much different back then. But we are extremely fortunate to have such an incredible library here in Setauket, which has gone through several expansions. What I want to talk about now a little bit is just some of the things that they are offering while we were all on lockdown for the COVID-19 virus. As you know, the safety of their patrons and their staff remains their top priority, so it is closed. But the library is a source of great information and learning and entertainment, and it's still very much here for the community. So they have a myriad of online resources. So I just want to talk a little bit about those now. They have virtual classes and events, which will feature, they're doing online classes and you can watch them from home. Their website is emmaclark.org, so there's no S, it's just emmaclark.org. The other great thing, and many museums are doing this, is you can take a virtual tour of the building. You can also visit other museums virtually, so you can get a list on their website of the virtual museum tours at emmaclark.org, and it's /museum-passes. But again, you can kind of just play around with their website. Hoopla, that is a online service for the movies we have here. They have now increased it to 15 titles per month, so that's very, very generous of you. But there's many things you can do home thanks to your Emma S. Clark Library card. You can download an ebook or an audiobook. As I just mentioned, you can watch a movie. They have a ton of music, so you can have a little dance party. You can learn a new language. Hey, oui, si. That's about all I know. You can brush up on skills. There's so many different classes and videos that they have available. There's crafts. You can read up on local history. They have a great resource for the Culper Spy Ring, and we thank you for that. So take a peek around their website. Again, it's emmaclark.org. So there's no S, but it really is the heart of the Three Village community. Before we end, I'll take you on a little tour again around the building. But I want to also talk about the Three Village Historical Society. They are not for profit, so if you shoot over to their Facebook page, there's a Donate Now button. Any little bit can help. Obviously, they depend on donations and our tours, and a lot of their fundraisers right now. They have coming up Prohibition Night, so they're trying to figure out what they're going to do with that. But again, these events that they do is how they raise money for the society. So if you guys can click that Donate Now, and $5, any little bit can help. We'd greatly appreciate it. So we do want to thank our friends over at the Emma S. Clark Library for allowing us to be on their grounds today and talk about Thomas Hodgkins and Emma S. Clark, and bring the community to you. Because again, I say this is our museum. So I'm just gonna flip you around, and then I'm gonna show you a little bit more, and then I'll go through the questions if anybody has any later, and I will answer them. But let me just give you one more little swoop of Setauket. And I really thank everyone for joining us today. And I thank you again to the folks over at MS Clark Library. We very much appreciate you doing this with us today. All right, so let's just take a sunny Saturday in May. Everyone be safe, be well, and have a positive day. So here we are. Again, we're at the original section of the library, which is just beautiful. And cherry blossoms are in full bloom. And again, we have the Setauket Village Green here, which was once known as Meeting House Green. Actually extended all the way down to where the pond is, if you're familiar with that, if you've been to the Setauket area. And they were across the way again, the Caroline Church of Brookhaven and the Setauket Presbyterian Church, which was taken over by the British. But we'll talk about that next week when we head on over to the Green and speak about the Battle of Setauket. And I just want to take you again to the stained glass with the Archangel Michael, because he watches over our community and the folks in the library and need you now more than ever. It's just a beautiful stained glass window, and you come by the library and you pass the Green at night, and you see our flag at half staff, and you see the light of the stained glass, and it's just one of the most beautiful sights. And then you look across and you see the Green. It's just a very, very special place to talk. And for you folks who have not been here, we hope to start doing tours again, modified beginning of July. But I will be coming to you virtually every Thursday, 4 p.m. for the True Tales from the Early Days on Long Island, Throwback Thursdays with Kate Wheeler-Strong. So this is Margo Arceri with Tri-Spy Tours. I am signing off. Have a beautiful weekend. Enjoy the sunshine, and God bless you all.